Alright, should be a video beginning. Yeah, and it will continue. Probably, but probably with interruptions. Frame rate is weird, but we'll live with it. Anyway, comments first, I suppose. Alright, Daniel Keys. A mathematical equation for the Faro cell is quite simple. Gullible kids, one Vegas gateway weekend. You do the math. I don't know. Joke. I don't like jokes. But the Faro cell is a terribly dangerous, scientific weapon, and there's lots of, I guess, devices or experiments that can be set up that certainly give people wrong impressions. And yes, the Faro cell is one of those deceivers. Doesn't present reality, it distorts it. Sort of. Anyway, this is, comments are just not good for my health. Dear Gary, doesn't disprove anything that you have said. Fine, but there is a John Wheeler eraser Duncan experiment where two scopes placed behind the screen in direct line with double slits detect light when the screen is turned to a transparent mode. Whatever. You should link to your specific experiment. There's a ton of experiments doing this stupid eraser crap in all kinds of insanely complex ways. Dropping frozen whatever hydrogen atoms and hitting them with lasers and pretending that's the same thing as a beam splitter, and then hitting them with another laser and that's the same as a mirror, and yeah, it's just crap. Anyway, when the screen is turned transparent mode, whatever that's suggesting there is light headed for the fringe minimum, which depends on light interfering at an angle which is occluded by the scopes, which themselves emit more direct light waves. Yeah, whatever you say. I've already pointed out there's lots of things to do with this two-slit experiment in terms of if they use photographic film and put it on the outside of the fringes, what's their theory? Will there be light? Will there not be light? Lots of different things you can do to tighten up our understanding of this deflection phenomenon. Yeah. What does it have to do with atomic properties of the slits or the properties of the photons or probabilities? Well, it's got to be one of them, idiot. I mean, frankly, I don't want to, what's the point here? Clearly, photons travel in a straight line, okay, generally speaking. Now, they're not traveling in a straight line when they go through a slit. And the question is, what's changing their path? And their only possible answers are the photon does it. It has a little engine and it can turns its steering wheel. Okay, I don't think it's very likely. Or you can say there's matter bits that are near the slit and it hits the little bits and the little bits deflected. And their answer. And then you go with some wavy stuff that the photon isn't even a thing. It's a spread out wavy thing, and it flies through the universe waving all over the place, and then it just, but when it interacts with something, it just does a little, I bless you. I bless you with my interaction. And then it just goes on about its way doing invisible things. Yeah, of those three, I'd say one of them is kind of the logical answer. Anyway. Also, could you please explain what you mean by bent space? Why? I'm not using the term because I like it or it's my term and I think it's a great idea to call it bent space. I'm saying that's what they call it, bent space-time. They're claiming that they have changed the structure of some thing that exists. Like space is some kind of thing and you can bend it, move it, and then things will roll down it or do something different because you bent it. That's their claim. And then they will attempt to add more information by saying, well, no, it's not really that space is bent, it's just that it has a geometry, of convergence. well, anti-divergence is what they'll say. It anti-diverges. So they'll use Ken Wheeler rhetoric. The counter space anti-diverges. Some kind of crap like that. But yeah, frankly, no. I think it's nonsense. Okay? It has to be acted on by a force. A force. Not nothing. Not bent anything. It's just junk as a theory. Do you mean curved trajectories? Well, I'm saying I don't, obviously curved trajectories without a mechanism is idiotic. So obviously things don't just curve, okay? This pen doesn't just curve. Something has to curve it. So what's the point of that? So I guess no, I don't mean just curved trajectories, because that would be nothing causing something. A phenomenological explanation. I don't even, this phenomenological word, it's just, those two words don't go together, in my opinion. Unsatisfying? I'm saying there's no satisfaction to be had in vague nothing as an explanation. The vague nothing did it. The invisible magical thingy did it. Those aren't that's garbage. It's kids physics or something. It's religious physics. It's not physics. Leaves a metallic taste. I wish there was some metal to it. I wish there was some substance to it. No, it's just the vapor of death. Yours sincerely, Nick. So anyway, I just don't know what you're getting at. So I gave you whatever answer I gave you, because it's all this blah blah blah, whatever wooey conversation. I mean, it's just, you know, I have no obligation to. All I'm trying to do is be honest to their explanation. Okay, so in 3 dimensions, as I've heard it presented by their best physicist, what they're basically saying is every material object is essentially pulling, you know, absorbing a kind of invisible fluid, and the fluid is flowing, and the matter bits are pulled towards it by the flow of the fluid. It's pretty much mathematically understood as a fluid dynamic equation. So at least that's what the math does with this gravity thing. And it's a sucking thing, primarily described that way. I suppose the two things are the same. Pulling and pushing are the same. I obviously go with the pushing force, and I obviously have a place to source it, but they don't. Either way, they metaphor it as non-real things. They don't metaphor, they analogize it to waterfalls and drains. If you attend a college course, you have unlimited access to JSTOR and could access these experiments should they exist there. Well, I don't know. Says you. I don't know. It would be nice if somebody can get access to this, whatever article it was, on this which way experiment done with the penetrating electron microscope. Fine. Italian thing, mostly. That would be great. But why do you tell me? I don't know. I'm obviously not going to go to college to get a $30 paper. Anyway, the acorn. Gary, I'm sorry my last comment was so long. Well, whatever. I am also sorry a lot of my questions and explanations diverge into things unrelated to your theory. Yeah. I will try to keep my questions and answers to people on point, related to your model's explanations, and much shorter in the future. Yeah, I don't care, you know, detail is fine, but frankly, I mean, the summation of your point, in my opinion, is such bad physics that it's like, you know, where are we going? And now you're going to reassert something after I've already explained my objections, and you haven't dealt with any of my objections to how you're perverting, in my opinion, the physics. Alright, the video was regarding CO2, and I wanted to look into the differences between water and CO2 in reference to equilibrium temperature. Well, again, that's just not paying any attention to the subject. The subject is a greenhouse gas. I mean, it's labeled greenhouse gases. So you have to deal with the fact that there's a concept called a greenhouse. And if you're going to talk about how greenhouses work, no one ever in the history of mankind talking about how greenhouses work worries about how hot the glass gets. The glass is not storing the energy. The glass isn't part of the effect in any direct way, except for the way in the sense that it's allowing more energy to go through in one form than it allows to go through it in another form. The speed at which it will transmit the energy is different, and that's all that a material needs to be a greenhouse gas, is to have that function. I still stand by my last paragraph, though. Well, then we don't have much to talk about on the subject, because I'll argue your premise is wrong. You don't know what a greenhouse is. As you said, you'll get through my comment on another video, but that last paragraph wasn't pulled out of my ass. It doesn't matter whether it was pulled out of it, just overtly ignores the words greenhouse gas. It ignores what the meaning of that is. Or greenhouse vapor, or greenhouse liquid, or greenhouse solid. It doesn't matter. The effect is being claimed is that it's a greenhouse effect. That is, there is a layer that transmits energy one way better than it's transmitting the energy reflecting off the surface. It was a conclusion I drew based on the fact that water can hold much more heat. So again, it's just so frickin' irrelevant. Nobody talks about how much heat glass can hold, or plastic, or mica, or any substance you could use to make your greenhouse. Nobody talks about how much heat they can hold in terms of how effective they are. What they talk about is what's the transmission differential. How well do they transmit ultraviolet light to how well do they transmit infrared light? That's the only thing at issue here. Is far more abundant than CO2. Again, irrelevant to the function. And it absorbs more of the infrared spectrum than CO2. You say it absorbs, quote unquote, and I'm going to argue, no, it's about how well it transmits something. So it either reflects or it transmits. So again, this absorbs word is absolutely useless in this conversation. Nobody talks about how much energy the glass layer on a greenhouse absorbs, because the amount is tiny and irrelevant to the function of the greenhouse. Alright, those facts alone should tell you that it is the primary cause. Well, no, those are not facts relevant to making a greenhouse. They're totally irrelevant to making a greenhouse for the equilibrium temperature other than the sun itself. So again, you've, in my opinion, in a very belligerent way, totally ignored what I said. This is, I mean, it's called a greenhouse gas for a reason. You are pretending the greenhouse concept doesn't exist. Sorry, that's idiotic. Alright, I do understand your argument as a film, however. Oh, you understand it, but you totally ignore it. Oh, brilliant. The problem I'm having, though, is that is a reflective mechanism. And by this image, oh, I'm sure this will be brilliant. I mean, you really don't believe greenhouses work? Oh, this just tells you so much. Atmosphere absorption of, so I have to interpret all of this, but I pointed this out in my own statement, that we can tell based on the spectrum of the energy that reflects which parts are going through, that's absorption, is going through, and what parts are reflected. So again, you're not understanding the word absorption in the sense that it's not reflected. If we're going to look at it and say, so I'm going to go look up at the atmosphere. So what I'm basically saying is energy will be shot at the atmosphere. I don't have to even shoot it. There's energy already there. And some of it's going to reflect back. And that's all I can see is the stuff that's reflected back. The stuff that's called absorbed doesn't mean it's absorbed. It means it didn't reflect. That is, it went through. See? So you're not getting it. So obviously these numbers are perfectly consistent with the fact that the CO2 is reflecting more energy down. And if I look at the atmosphere from above, the CO2 reflects less, which means more of it went through. So this is perfectly validates my own point. Not a great, not good for your side. Oxygen would reflect much more, both because it is much higher concentration, because it absorbs almost no infrared. And again, where is oxygen not part of this conversation? CO2. But anyway, you could probably say the same of nitrogen too. Clearly, it's not a specific heat or infrared emission argument in your case. I don't know, I keep pointing it out to you. This has to do with how energy transmits through the atom. And if the energy is changed after it transmits through and then it comes back in a different form, it may not transmit as readily. That means it's trapped on the other side. But this reflective argument doesn't seem to square either just by looking at oxygen, let alone nitrogen. Well, sorry, I think it squares quite perfectly. Alright, the real worries are the pollution, well, says you, ocean acidification, says you, and potential changes in ice caps since CO2 reduces the temperature at which ice melts. What do you mean? Because it works like a greenhouse gas? See, again, it's just it's just so stupid. Why do you think it helps melt the ice? It's because it's making little tiny greenhouses in the ice after it dissolves into the sea during summer melting. And this action, by the above logic, could cause more increase in heating since you're introducing so much more water into the oceans. So the better argument is that the CO2 close to the surface has less potential because it's collecting less directional amounts of light. So there's less light. It has a capacity to screw up the lower it is in the atmosphere. Alright, so the comment here is this James guy says absolutely nothing here. But the giveaway is the Thunderbolts. So we're back to the Thunderbolt retards. I didn't know he was a Thunderbolter. Water can hold much more, oh, so that's a quote. Primary cause for equilibrium temperature than the sun itself. I don't remember that quote being in his comment. So like I said, water can hold much more heat than CO2, is far more abundant than CO2, and absorbs more of the infrared spectrum than CO2. So again, this absorption argument is just wrong. Those facts alone. No, sorry. Alright, anyway, yes, well stated. And so, well stated, you ignored the subject, which isn't how much energy an atom can hold, but what it reflects and what it transmits. Alright, one more thing, Mr. Korn. As in I don't know what that means. Okay, it's an acorn. H2O is the cause of the greenhouse effect. So now we have a greenhouse effect, but only one molecule is doing it, which is just retarded. Every molecule, as I pointed out, probably has some greenhouse consequence. It has some differential in how it transmits energy. So, and all molecules will have a problem with the equation of the energy went through me one way and it reflected back in another form, and I handled it differently. Everything. is like that. But some much worse than others in terms of how intolerant they are in changes. But H2O is not gaseous in the Earth's atmosphere, and again, totally irrelevant to its atomic function, what it does. It doesn't have to be gaseous. All it has to be is vaporous. All it has to do is be there as a transparent atom. Our atmosphere is far too cold to allow for the existence of gaseous H2O. So again, this argument that you can take compounds, H2O, and make them pure gases. Yeah, I would argue that I don't know if that ever happens, frankly. It just has to do with the fact that most molecules, it's not really true. There's not too many compounds, atoms, that don't stick to each other. And essentially, to have a gas, you basically have to have something that doesn't like to get clumpy. It is a liquid. Only liquid H2O has a high heat capacity. So again, they keep talking about how much capacity it has to hold energy when it's all about what's radiated, not what's held. What you never suspected about water in the atmosphere. So a silly link to crappy bolts. So just a nothing comment, I mean, realistically. Just keeps making the same assertions and ignoring the ones I've made. James begin. I would say that CO2 film argument is counteracted. So he's arguing that, well, there's no point in me arguing it, right? I've already pointed out that the film argument is it doesn't matter what level of the atmosphere the film is in. Okay, it just doesn't matter. It's like in magnetism and electricity and the whole Gaussian surfaces and all that kind of stuff. It just doesn't matter what the shape of the thing is at all. The effect just has to do with the amount of radiation that can get through it, wherever the atom is. Alright, is counteracted by the fact that oxygen would reflect IR even more due to its concentration and tiny absorption spectrum. So again, this isn't a competition. Both gases are greenhouse gases. Water is a significant greenhouse gas. That was pointed out. It's just that it just happens to be that if you want to just go by mass, CO2 is more effective. So if you had more CO2 in the atmosphere, it greenhouses even better than oxygen. Wouldn't oxygen be considered a greenhouse gas by this model? Of course it would. CO2. They're hydrocarbons, okay, is what they're called. And, you know, well, I don't even know how to... I mean, hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, you know, methane, they all have a constituent of oxygen or hydrogen as the oxidizer. Okay, I don't know how to say it. But again, you're just denying the concept of greenhouse. There's just no point in saying greenhouses are made out of substances that absorb energy and then you know, store it and then they radiate it. No, the idea is they transmit it. So you're just ignoring the transmission argument altogether, which is just wrong. Alright, another James idiot comment with another link to this crap. Come on, Gary. This'll, you know, nothing here. You know what I'm talking about. No. I know what you're talking about, which is you're the one on some sort of mission for God or whatever it is for, and you just don't give a fuck about what I overtly say, and you're telling me I have to think greenhouse doesn't mean greenhouse. Yeah. You brought the jargon of global warming. You bought the jargon of global warming. Again, this is just idiotic. I pointed out why I understand this. I understand that the Jurassic period was really warm. The facts indicate that from lots of different ways. What's the difference between then and now? Oh yeah, there's a bunch of carbon in the ground. Sunk. You do understand it. You were pretending you understood it. Just fuck you in the ass. I don't have to take this crap from you, you stupid cunt. This is what everybody does. Well, fuck you. Literally, you're not making an argument here. Literally, every believer in global warming has bought the jargon unexamined. Again, I don't have to buy anybody's jargon. So who puts it in the simplest term as I do? So obviously I didn't steal the idea from anybody, right? Bunch of oil, bunch of coal in the ground. We take half of that and put it in the air. Well, half the oil anyway. Back in the air. Back in the active environment. Yeah, that's the difference between then and now. And so yes, we've stopped global cooling, idiot. Literally, I mean, that's why the world got cold. The planet got cold because the dinosaurs and the plants and all this crap sunk a bunch of carbon into the ground. Literally, every believer in global warming has bought the jargon unexamined. So you just keep saying the same thing over and over again. And they all, like yourself included, pretend that they understand it. I understand a greenhouse, jackass. I said this already, so there's no point. You just completely ignore the argument. You don't know what a greenhouse is. You don't accept their existence. You are not immune, dude. Fuck you in the ass. Still dead with that crap. Bro. You're a butthead, bro. You fell for the hook, line, and sinker. Again, there's absolutely no evidence that I fell for any jargon, that I fell for any bullshit. It's just this silly point you're making. It's absolutely silly. Global warming is a political movement. Well, everything's a political movement to some respects or another, but it's really idiotic to think that they invented some reason to say, holy fuck, we have to use less energy. There's nobody who wants to use less energy, jackass. Everybody loves batteries and toys and gimmicks. So for you to call it a conspiracy based on some kind of political agenda is retarded. They actually believe it. You don't think they actually understand or perceive that the planet's getting warmer. And you don't, and again, you're just denying evidence. I mean, unfortunate for your side, the evidence exists, jackass. It happens to exist. It's really not science. Right? That's really not the word not. Ought is not the word not. My advice, go fuck yourself. To you as a fellow YouTube scientist, I'm not a fellow YouTube scientist. Never pretend you understand what you don't. Well, again, I'm not pretending about anything. I've defended what I say. You can just go fuck yourself and die with that kind of rhetoric, fuckhead. You have no right to type this crap on my fucking goddamn videos. And when, especially with your stupid tag crap. So take your thunderbolts religion, shove it up your fucking ass. You're the one being evasive and deceptive. Fuck you. And almost fuck you, Acorn guy. Like I said, eventually I will read the rest of your crap. But you just ignored my explicit argument to you. And let's see if you'll ignore it twice. This is about what the molecule transmits through it. What goes through the atom or through the molecule. This isn't about what stays inside of it. Alright, spam folder, no doubt. Let's find something funny in there. Alright. Yeah, there's only the one. Okay. Check the comment exchange between Mindless Marbles and myself. Yeah, so I did waste my time doing that. There's no exchanging comments on Holidays 2 Slit Challenge Which Way video. Well, we'll go there. You'll see there's nothing. I think you should address these points. There's no fucking points, asshole. So this guy's just obviously a sock account for Mindless Marbles, I guess. Also, check out the comment from Mindless regarding the Eddington experiment being redone during the 2017 eclipse. I have videos on the subject. I just pointed out in a recent video how this amateur, so that it isn't a published paper, number one. as far as I could tell, by any real journal. He's an amateur, whatever, telescope person. I pointed all the flaws in what he did. Okay, it's not the Eddington experiment in any way whatsoever, because the technology is less than what Eddington was using. All right, it's not a 12-inch telescope. It's not the kind of telescope that gets the less distorted images. It's a reflective telescope, which does distort images. Second, it's not photographic film. And the biggest gripe I have is the guy is attempting to say he successfully did it with this technology that is not even using control images but using sky charts, and there's no images posted in his paper. Okay, I mean, there's no actual high resolution evidence of what quality of image he got of the stars. The whole thing is based on the quality of your image. If your image sucks, your data sucks. Okay. If Marbles is blocked on your channel, well, he was, and I think he asked to get unblocked, but I don't know. You should consider unblocking. No, I don't think so, because he's an ass douche, fuck liar. Okay, him because he raises good points, in my opinion. Well, you can go fuck yourself. His points are shit. All right, and he says, and he makes accusations he can't back up with anything real. So we'll go look at his douchebag comments on fucking Holiday's douchebag video. It's all douchebag bullshit. There's the liars, these fucking liars. Alright, the quantum eraser experiment can be done with simple interferometer setup and some polarizing filters. I mean, I have seen some sloppy versions, but what do you think you're exactly teasing out of the experiment again? I mean, well, whatever. I mean, it's too bad you can't link to it. You know, he's pretending to be Miles Mathis now, probably the cowboy. When the two sources of light have perpendicular polarization, the fringe pattern disappears. But then, when the recombined beam passes through a third polarizer for 45 degrees, with the other two, the fringe pattern reappears. Well, obviously you have to have 3 filters for the 45 one to matter, so you obviously have to be using 3 filters somewhere. This is an experiment that could easily be accomplished with equipment in any state university and physics program. Yes, they should do more stuff, but I mean, the danger with polarizing film, I'm sorry, is that it does fuck with the light. You know, it's not a passive filter. Piro. Oh, I see. I haven't watched Gary for some time. I didn't see why I should have to argue about every esoteric attempt at 2-slit plus. Which way? So again, you didn't have to pay attention to the fact that I'm making a very specific point about an experiment always cited by physicists as if it took place when it hadn't taken place. Oh, that's asking too much from this asshole. You know, when it gets into weather control and flat earth and all this other conspiracy against whatever peer review. Could you imagine if Piro was on a peer review panel? You know, what kind of bias he has? I mean, you know, seriously. What a douche. Alright, so this is the mindless Marbles who this other asshole says makes good points. No, he hasn't. He doesn't. He lies is what he does. He has denied that you can block one of the slits without blocking the other one. It's just a lie. I'm saying if you have the technology, do it. So why can't somebody do it? Oh, yeah, because they don't do it. I mean, we obviously can't do it. You know, a tiny, 20th of a millimeter, you're going to make devices that are capable of doing that without, disturbing everything. You can do it at a fairly far away distance from the slits, too. No, you can't fairly far away. If this total slit width of the 2 slits is, let's say, they're 1/10 of a millimeter to 1/10 of it, you're talking about 1/3 of a millimeter. See, the waves just have to get to the other. Well, maybe I'll put some images of that. Yeah, okay, I'll do some drawing. As I have once shown him, he did cardboard cutouts of slits, had a crappy horrible video, I mean, or image or whatever it was. You couldn't see anything. It's a piece of shit. I mean, I did a video response to it. It's crap. And he wants me to be impressed by it? Well, forget it. As I have once shown him. And the results that you see, the single slit pattern projected on the wall, which is just horseshit. So again, he can't do a rationally, I mean, a decent experiment showing any of this with any kind of precision. But, oh yeah, we're all supposed to just follow his, I say that's what it is. So we're somewhere in here he says 3 centimeters. I guess maybe he edited this. This means the slit emits a single pattern and the double slit pattern emerges in the space between the slits in the wall. So again, it's not where it emerges. So let's go to their own argument. Because that's just a pile of crap. Slits. Ugh. Alright, so let's see. It says this. Yeah, so he took out the 3 centimeter part, I guess. I'll have to look. Maybe there's another comment where he has it in there. Doesn't matter, but I mean, it is an important point, but we'll get to it. Alright, so double slit pattern. Alright, so what you can sort of notice is that all of the places that you're going to end up going, that is, all the crossed lines, are all crossed once the wave has gone the distance of the other slit. So the only thing wrong about this drawing is that you have to think about the light's frequency, which is really small. So it's 1,000th, less, like 1/1500th of a millimeter. Okay, so the slit is 1/10 of a millimeter, let's say, and now you're going to have something that's 1,500 times. You can shove 1,500 waves, these lines, inside a millimeter. So you'd understand that for each one of these crosses, that is these lines, there's one here, one here, one here, and one here, would indicate how many patterns you would get on the wall. Okay? Each one would represent a ray going to a location. So they'll kind of tell you how many bars you should get. And so frankly, in this experiment with regular light, you should be getting like 1,500 bars of light if their own wave theory made any sense. But the real point is once you go a millimeter away from the two slits, you've already essentially done all the interfering has already taken place. That is all. So you see, this is a interference, 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 interference. This is all redundant. Once you've already done this one, you've decided the path. So the path is decided from at a millimeter distance from the slits. You've already decided the path of all the photons. You don't have to do it again. You've already decided where they're going. Oh, I should make this always visible. That matters much, but anyway. So I might as well do some more two slits. So the argument I'm making is a counter argument to this slop. Is that the I got way too many. So one of the things that I haven't seen a response to is my argument that when you have multi-slits, more than one slit, so you can't see all of this drawing, unfortunately, is that the slits, when there's multiple slits, that each slit puts an image in a location, a complete image, complete image, complete image. So each location is a complete image of what goes into the slits, indicating that each slit has to produce a full image at each location eventually. So that is, randomly, as the photons go through, this time it might go here, the next time it goes here, but it always goes to the same location on the bar. So when the bar is created, the image on the projected screen, there's a pure correlation between what light went through the slit. How to say that? The position is always maintained. So where it went through the slit is where it'll be on the bar. So if it was in the middle, if it went through the middle, then it'll be in the middle of the bar. If it went through the corner, it'll go through to the corner. It just keeps duplicating precisely what went through the slit for there to be an ability to create images. And that has nothing to do with interference. But I haven't heard any counter argument to that argument. So here, I'll give you this one real quick since I'm here. So I would argue that you can sort of understand that the wave, okay, doesn't happen with the photons waving. The wave is sort of built into what happens to the electrons. So you can sort of understand that as the electrons pressurize, that is, if you move two surfaces closer and closer, you put more and more pressure on the electrons and they begin to start bulging. And that little bit of bulging, I've really emphasized it here. Okay, I've made it really exaggerated, just like the other pattern was exaggerated, just so you could see it. But they would bulge. So this bulge would be tiny inside this space. But the electrons don't like each other, so they start moving away from each other, and it just kind of creates, they're different positions. And those positions are what's dictating how the light gets diffracted. So when the electrons are, the more pressure they're under, the changes the angle they move at. And so the two factors, the frequency of the light and the pressure of the electron, are the two factors that decide which way the photon is emitted, re-emitted probably, or reflected or refracted or deflected, depending on what kind of jargon you want to use. Alright, so this, I did respond to Piro's bullshit. He says, I should have argued about every esoteric attempt. And then I said, you should have kept your mouth shut because there's no evidence that any experiment to detect which slit has been done. You're selling fake physics. He denies the two slit in the past, so that's just a lie. These which way experiments are being done and the results are being peer-reviewed. No evidence provided, just like flat earthers. So again, the only thing we have is a brief description of a paper where they used an electron microscope, and I already read the jargon in the paper. I mean, yeah, right. That's a detector. I'm afraid not. So he says he'll see what he can provide, and I sort of laughed at that because we're not going to get any of that. I think your peer review conspiracy is crazy. And I just responded, claims made by reckless fake evidence citers like you, it should be a C, are not peer reviewed. I mean, people making claims, they're not peer reviewed claims. Nobody has peer reviewed the Huygens theory, or any of this crap. None of this has been under any peer review. You can do it fairly far away distance from the slits. If this were true, everyone would be doing it. So that's if you could just sit there and stick you're doing the two slit experiment. And all I have to do is stick a piece of paper in and block, and all of a sudden the pattern changes. Well, the pattern's not going to change because, as I just pointed out, all the interference already happened at the source. And it would debunk the wave interference as the cause of the pattern. Well, it frankly really wouldn't, because the pattern's already made at the source. Given the right slit distance and slit width, it can take about 6 centimeters. Okay, why? Why 6 centimeters? How do you rationally make that make any sense? There's no need to go 6 centimeters. Once one wave has gone over the other opening and the other wave has gone over the other opening, all of the pattern is made. So you're just wrong. Before the two beams combine, I think. I don't remember exactly. Well, you're not even paying attention to your own brilliant theory. You just need the slit to be 1 millimeter apart, about 1 millimeter apart, which is huge. Nobody does two slit experiments 1 millimeter apart, and both to be 0.1 millimeter wide. So sorry, that's not the two slit experiment. That's two single slits, frankly. You're not going to get the multiple two slit pattern with that arrangement. Are you calling me a liar? Yeah, I'm saying you're full of shit. That's right. Let's see, Mickey Farley. Experiments to detect which slit the photon went through have been done. Okay, just link to them. What's this? Why is it so hard to link? Link to the video, the YouTube video. Link to the 1960s experiment. Link to something. Link to something, please. And they've been done in many different variations. Then where are they? Try using Google sometime. Why don't you do that, genius? I mean, amazing. Try using Google sometime, genius. Well, he says they're all over the place. They have been done, and yet he don't know how to link. Try using the internet, asshole. What do you think the internet's made out of? Oh, that's right. It's made out of links, idiot. That's the whole point of the fucking internet, jackass. Not for you to say shit, but for you to link to shit. You might learn a thing or two. Now, you might be able to figure out that if you're going to boldly talk about how, well, there's grassy lawns everywhere, then you should be able to take a picture of one. Could you please address his contention that if true, everyone would be doing that? Why doesn't everyone do that if true? And why does he think everyone would in fact do that? Well, I think they do it just for the fun of it, right? I mean, oh, I put a screen in and the pattern disappears. See, I'm arguing quite obviously the pattern will not disappear. That's why nobody's doing it. It's because all they'll do is put half the pattern over here and half the pattern here. That's right. I'll have half of the pattern will be on this little screen. It'll be much smaller, and half the pattern will be over there, much bigger. Also, could you address the second part of the comment about debunking wave interference as a cause of the pattern? I don't remember any of that. Does he have a point there that if the second slit is blockable, it rules out the interference explanation? No, their explanation is that there's no pattern when they block one slit, when obviously a single slit creates a pattern. So you know they're lying just because their own rule of Heisenberg would have to be wrong. Anyway, Marbles claims he gave you evidence or information regarding how it can be done. Well, he claims something, and that means you're going to take his claim seriously, even though he doesn't show it to you. I mean, you see how bullshit that is? If Marbles is right about the second slit blocking, what does it mean for your theory? Well, from my perspective, again, I don't know. You're saying that he's going to prove that he can block the in-flight photons and change the pattern. Well, I'm clearly overtly saying, no, he can't. Now, if he could do that, I have to think about what the implications would be. I mean, clearly, from my theory, that wouldn't make any sense. But I don't think from his theory it makes any sense either. I mean, how can he undo what has already been interfered with? The interference happened a millimeter from the slit. How can he undo that? Anyway, Gary is desperately clinging to materialism. I don't know even what that means. Yes, I'm a realist, not a fucking Fruit Loop eating sissy brain. The delayed choice quantum eraser experiment version of the two-slit experiment first performed in 1999 proved idealism. It doesn't prove any such thing, you silly person. You don't even know what you don't even know what polarization is or how a polarizing filter works, and yet you're making claims. Shows that you're not a very good scientist. He's desperately clinging to his God complex. Well, it's like obvious that you people have the God complex. Quite obvious. It's the only thing preventing him from a full-blown psychotic episode. Now, the psychotic episode is when I found out when I was 7 years old that I live on a planet full of lying, scummy, stupid retards. It was very depressing. Oh yeah, he's a textbook narcissist. Well, it's really easy to be a narcissist when you're living on a planet of such despicable, crappy, shitty performing robots. You people suck at everything. Especially logic. Alright, so I think that's probably enough. So, till the next time, and such, and so forth, and whatnot. I think that should suffice.